All right, we'll call the Finance Committee meeting to order. Everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Claims in the amount of $620,921.17.
Move to approve. Oh, second.
Got a motion and second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Next up, we have Brent, who is going to make our first presentation for the 2025 budget.
Okay, and thank you all for being here an hour earlier, and thanks staff for being here too. There's some items on the agenda that we're all going to be interested in, and hopefully going forward we'll be in pretty good shape. Let me see. Okay, how do I kick it up? There it is. All right. Oh, that was a nice skyline. Okay, 2025 budget presentation. Ooh. Can you guys, are you able to see it on your screens at all?
Yeah.
or-
Yeah.
Yes, thank
Great.
you.
I just want to make sure it's transmitting to everybody.
Good.
Okay, for the first part, we all saw the budget scheduling. We're on a kind of a tighter schedule than we have been in the past. That, of course, due to loss of finance director and the previous administrator not being here as well. So those two people were pretty key, but together Kathy and everybody has been kind of pulling together to get everything in order for this presentation here in early September. So I appreciate that. I appreciate staff, and I appreciate the department heads pulling everything together for this budget presentation. Okay, many considerations that we have every year when dealing with the annual budget. For 2025, we're really looking at, and I'll start on the left there, employee, I wonder if that mouse shows up there, employee retention. Workers may be more difficult to come by over the next 10 years. We've seen that with police, fire, office workers, and professional staff like our current finance director, trying to find enough applicants for that. I think we've been out for 12 weeks, and we have 5 total applicants, with really 3 of those being qualified for bringing in for interviews. Labor market, which is kind of showing us, really, the labor market is still, so just below that, labor market is still an employee market, more jobs than employees. Below that, the need to study and identify additional ways to retain and entice employees, I think, is going to be something we're going to need to look at coming up in 2025. I would go to the next column top. This is something that I think we should consider. Considering the average step increase of 2% for those 10 employees, so we currently have 10 employees at the top of their scale. That addition to the budget, which I did factor into the budget that you'll see, is a total of $13,000 if you were to do that. When you think about that, you've got 10 employees, well-experienced employees, because they're at the top of their scale. For them to just get the COLA, or the cost of living piece, without the standard 2% that all the other employees are getting, is a little bit tough, and can be discouraging to those employees that may seek employment elsewhere. They're the most experienced employees; they could easily go somewhere else. So that should be under consideration going forward. Know that that amount, $13,000 for those 10 employees, is included in the budget, and it's something that could either be kept in or taken out by this committee, okay? And potentially by the mayor, being mayor's budget as well. All right. So down below that, understand that we've committed ourselves to investing to ongoing infrastructure improvements through 2028. There was an approved plan, infrastructure plan that approved that kind of funding through 2028. So take that into account as we're going forward here. Roughly, it's about $4 million a year for infrastructure improvements. And that we take out every 2 years. 2025 is one of those upcoming years that we take out, 8 million total for the next 2 years. In 2023, you committed to building and renovating the new DPW building and the police building. The costs for construction on the projects are have gone up, and that's something that we'll have to take a look at. In order to get both of those departments into their existing buildings that we have bought, that increased this budget and a borrowing that I'll show you here in a minute by almost a little over $5 million. That's about right? Okay. And by the way, if Kathy jumps in here, it's because I said something wrong and she's going to correct me and it's going to be all fine, but she's here to catch me on anything that I might have missed. And same with anybody back there if I missed something, okay? Just feel free to jump on in, all right? So considering though, the cost of new construction on both those projects would have been 60% higher in costs, roughly, knowing that if we would have built both those projects brand new, considering also they are legacy projects, they're long-term projects that are going to last 30, 40 years, we hope. So, rising cost of healthcare, you're never going to get away from that. I originally proposed 10% in this budget. We dropped that to 7%. That seems to be a more realistic number of what's being talked about. We should have those numbers by the end of September is what we're hoping. The city will need to continue to grow its assessed value by adding new construction. The city ordinances will also need continuous review and updating to match current goals of the city. Consider additional incentives for new construction. That's also something that could be considered. By growing our tax base, you're going to help everything else level off and the future levy amounts level off, and the future or the current proposed note borrowings, those will start to level off if tax base is increased. The more tax base you have, the more you can borrow, the more you can reduce those other costs. Reduction in building permits due to lack of property for new construction is something that we will need to consider. Building permits have dropped. I think we proposed 400,000 this year. It's coming in less than that in 2024. So we dropped the amount in 2025 to 300,000 from its peak at about 400,000. Actually, I think it went up to almost 500 at one point too. Yeah, so but we're predicting that to start to level off, less lands available for expansion. We do have rising operational costs from all vendors. They continue to increase. Our auditors, assessors, vehicle parts, cleaning supplies, paper, you name it, electricity, natural gas, diesel, and gasoline all continue to rise in costs. I think, I don't think we haven't seen below $3 a gallon. If it does dip down below $3 a gallon, it's there for a very short period of time. But I think we've all grown accustomed to the $3.25 or $3.10 or whatever a gallon. That's just where we're at. Inflationary costs, and those are all part of inflationary costs, continue to increase over the last 4 years. Since COVID, everything has continued to go up. COLA, the cost of living adjustments. We've seen cost of living adjustments in Social Security at 8.7 in 2023, 3.2 in 2024, and currently it sits at an average of about 2.5 or 2.6 right now for Social Security, or what they're proposing for next year's Social Security numbers. So the region just happens to be, our region, the metro region, we're at 2.6%, which is one of the lowest in the country. I think it is the lowest in the country. So definitely in our region, it's the lowest that I've seen. So we're kind of fortunate to be close to there, but of course, as far as wages and that wouldn't rise as much if you consider a COLA of 2.6%. So this year's budget, let's go on to the next slide. That one I knew was going to take a little bit long. Okay, this year's budget, here's the numbers that we currently have. This is considering the 2.6 COLA, the 2%, average 2% increase for all steps, for anybody jumping from one step to the next step. And that's, again, majority of your employees, all but 10 are at the top of their scales. And cost of healthcare all went into the total operating expenditures that went up to the $12,787,000. Oh, that also included, I added in the CIT, or the IT position for the police is in that $12,787,000, and also $30,000 of the cost for the fire department inspector is also included in that total. And the reason why we did $30,000 for the cost of the inspector, and I'll come to that a little bit further as well, we'll go into a little more detail, but essentially it's, if we hired that inspector halfway through the year, our cost would be 30% because the other jurisdictions are picking up a portion of that. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But the overall number, you look at proposed mill rate, we are looking at a proposed mill rate of 5.024, which is about, well, which is exactly $502 per 100,000 borrowed, over the $457 per 100,000 borrowed from the 2024 budget. Why is it increasing so much? You got to go to the table down below. The operations, and staff should be commended for this, the operational costs were kept pretty even. No real significant changes. If you go line for line in the budget, if a department head had to increase something somewhere, they dropped it somewhere else. So most departments stayed pretty well even. What it comes into being is our operational costs then only increased 0.23%. So it's fractions of a mil. That is roughly, that's 70 cents per 100,000 borrowing. Okay, that's how the staff did a great job, and department heads did a great job of keeping their budgets level. That only increased that much due to the estimated assessed valuations and, again, the staff keeping things fairly level within their department budgets. The reason for the major increase is that borrowing that we need to do for the debt service. You can see a 37% increase on that, 37.18% increase, and that's in that bottom right-hand corner of that table. So overall, if you look historically at it, you saw in 2024, you saw a 2.9% increase. In 23, you saw a 1.87 increase to the operating costs. 2022, in that little sidebar table, you saw a 4.66% increase in the operating costs. And then in 2021, actually that's a negative 23.28. And that was due to a revaluation, an assessment that changed that happened in 2021. Okay, so that number dropped significantly in 2021, which will happen. I think we're looking at another assessment. Mike, help me fill that in. They're looking at this year doing the assessment, so that would take effect probably in 2026, 27, yep. Okay. So, we're expecting to see that again soon here. Okay. So this is the numbers I talked about already. On a $400,000 home, what does it mean? It's $181 a year and $15.11 per month. And most of that is your debt service again. I would say, all of that is your debt service. I ain't gonna play around with 70 cents. So, so you can see over the years, if you looked at that chart, you would see your total amount per taxes, depending upon what size home you have, going up about $503 per 100,000 borrowing. That's all rounded up from the previous table. But this does not include your first tax credit and first dollar credit or your lottery credit or the school levy credit. I forgot about that one. So those totals, you would have a levy credit on that as well. Okay. Let's go right into the personnel request. Anybody got questions on what we just saw? It's essentially, everything's held steady except for our debt levy. And I'll have a chart for that here in a moment, but I wanted to talk first, before I got into those details, about capital improvements in that part of the financial, or the finance requests here. I wanted to talk personnel requests. Are we good to go on then? Okay. Okay, great. So, actually, the first one I have, and the first one that is in your packet, so I would refer back to your packet if you have them with you. And in that packet, we have our fire department request. And Drew, I am going to ask you to come up, but the note down below there, fire department requests, you would see that he's requesting roughly $90,000 into the budget. But when we looked at how we would kind of maybe piece this out, we looked at an increase of $30,000 to the budget if we hired that individual halfway through this year. Then in 2026, it would be a $60,000 total increase. So it would be half this year, and then it would go up another $30,000 in 2026. That's what you're committing to by piecing it out this way. And so it would be a full $60,000 impact to the city. The other 40% of the salaries actually come from the other jurisdictions. Okay? And as far as the need for the position, I'm just going to let Drew jump in and handle that. Go ahead. Let me grab my water here so I can take a...
Good evening. So this position request is because the workload continues to increase for a fire inspector. And I don't know if in your packet that you got,
Everything should be in there.
I did submit a justification for the position, but right now we're sitting at about 1,240 fire inspections, and that's district-wide. But in the city of Hudson alone, there's 979 fire inspections that we conduct, initial fire inspections. And then if there's any violations, then we have to conduct follow-up inspections, and then until everybody becomes compliant. So on top of that, for a fire inspector, all new construction gets occupancy, fire occupancy prior to them being able to move in. During construction, we do rough-in inspections of all the sprinkler systems, alarm systems. We have to do the hydro test. Anything fire protection related within new construction or even remodel construction has to get inspected. When Physicians was built, I believe we were over there about 30 times throughout that project for different phases that were completed. The government center recently, which tomorrow we're going to go out there and do finals tomorrow. There's about between 20 and 25 times we went out there at different phases to conduct sprinkler inspections and alarm inspections and finals and everything else in the project. So not only the inspections and all the construction and everything that goes with it, the other thing that we don't have the capacity to perform, and there's things we should be doing, is like food truck inspections as an example. We don't have the capacity to be doing that. We should be doing tent inspections for any of the festivals that are held in town, and special event inspections. A lot of that stuff sometimes will take place on the weekends or the Friday prior to them opening up. By state statute, we're supposed to be doing food truck inspections. I'm in the process of writing we have to have a city ordinance for that first, which I'm in the process of writing the city ordinance to get that up and running. We have to hold them to the same standard that we would hold our brick and mortars to. And in fact, we should be doing that in the fact that our brick and mortars pay taxes in the city, these food trucks come in, benefit off the festivities in town, different things, and then they leave and they don't contribute anything necessarily tax-wise to the city, but they should be held to the same standard as everybody else for fire protection. The tent inspections, by NFPA 1, we need to be doing tent inspections to make sure they're non-flammable tents. At the festivals, we should be assessing for the need for extinguishers, proper exiting, that they're not grilling under tents, stuff like that. That's all stuff we really should be doing that we just don't have the capacity to be doing right now. So, and then the other component of it, which is hopeful that it's paid for by the partners, but In the last year, we were able to change fire ordinances in the town of Hudson and in the village, which has allowed us to bill for re-inspections. So we're actually recouping some of our costs out of those places, much like we're doing in the city when we do re-inspections. So even though this goes against city borrowing, the partners are paying in and they're also benefiting from it also. This was presented to our fire board. It was approved unanimously as presented tonight. So they have seen this and they have seen what the increases are going to be in their payments to the city. And they did approve that a few weeks ago at our fire board meeting.
Drew, can you clarify the shared revenue comment you have in your?
Yes.
It
Yep.
says it can't be used for administrative services, or can it be used for this position? Which I'm saying, I'm assuming no.
It can be used for the position. I believe the administrative part of that, I don't know if shared revenue wise, it can't be used for anything other than what's listed. So I don't believe like you could use that money in the clerk's office or you couldn't use it in HR or something administratively. The intent of Act 12 was for police, fire, public works, with that added increase. Yep. One thing I will note in that also, the 2% dues is what we get, the city gets paid back from the state of Wisconsin, 2% of all insurance that's paid. By statute, we have to do all our fire inspections, we have to audit out every year. If we don't audit out and we, or self-report I should say, and we get audited and they find that we aren't fulfilling our fire inspection obligations, we run the risk of losing our 2% due money from the state. So that's very important. The fire partners are extremely serious about getting theirs completed because that's a big chunk of their budget, or some of the money they can use towards us is keeping their 2% dues current. So, and as the value of the city goes up, that increases also as it goes. So I believe 3 or 4 years ago, the city was only getting about 90,000, and 2% dues were up to 122,000 now. Yes.
So I know in another part of your report, you commented on the difficulty in getting people to show up between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Do your fire inspectors respond to calls? So this
Yes.
would be another
Yep.
person that should be available to
Correct.
come quickly
Yep.
to participate? Okay. And I appreciate the fact that you have worked hard at making sure that we're charging appropriate fees within, some of our large building projects and the other municipalities and so on. Do you think, will quite a bit of the fees pay for this person's salary? Or do you have a breakdown on that, or?
I don't, so last year was the first year that we started collecting the percentages based on the cost of projects.
Okay.
But last year, the money that we received as part of the projects was about $46,000.
Okay.
So depending on how much construction is, how much the projects are worth, obviously has a direct effect on how much we take in.
Varies year to
It
year.
varies. This year so far, we've collected about 15,000
Okay,
this year. So,
okay.
Drew, did you mention anything about the additional response time? Is it their trained fire?
yeah, and that's kind of what Joy was alluding to, is they're able to be counted as staff. I mean, they're trained firefighters, and it should hopefully cut down on response times.
Yeah.
Right now, that between 8 and 4, our biggest time right now is about 7 to 11, 7 to noon is the time of day when everybody absolutely has to go to work. And if we get a call in that amount of time, in that time frame, we struggle to get adequate personnel. We're averaging about 6 to 8 during that time of day, depending on the type of call. We could obviously use more people, but as the afternoon goes on, that increases. People start coming home from work and they're back in the community. But we do roster 45 people, but on average right now during the day, I think between 8 and 4, we're only getting about 12 people. So.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Guess we're good on the fire
All
department.
right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew.
Okay, and again, we have added that into the budget, but again, you can either keep it in, take it out, It's part of the setup, or part of the overall cost that would be shown in the end levy result. Again, you can see there is a need for it, and that's why we did put it into the budget. The next position is police IT position. And actually, there's been rapid changes in that department, I guess. The person that had been doing the IT services for the police department has now left the police department, and so they're without a, I guess, full-time IT person that had been handling the duties. So that position, if it were to be filled, we'd be looking to fill that as soon as we possibly could. But it is included in the budget. Overall impact I put in there is 100,000, but you can see the totals there. We'd be looking for somebody around 70,000, and with retirement and healthcare and all that added in, you're getting up to the 95.4. Whether we can find somebody that has IT expertise and hopefully police department expertise as well for that amount, that'll be kind of the trick. I think that's on the low end of where
For
you need to be.
70,000?
For 70,000, yes. That would be the big question. I would expect that would have to go higher if that's what we were going to do. But I will let, or have Jeff come up and kind of explain the position. It is in your packet as well. But Jeff, you want to talk quickly on it, I guess?
Good evening, everyone. So I think I've spoken to most of you, if not all of you individually, about this need that we have that really kind of showed itself once the city kind of eliminated its IT from city staff. And we went with the contract model that allows us a person on site in the whole city once a week. Obviously, just like everybody else, the need for our technology in the police department is increasing every year, right? We have the traffic cameras now, we have the flock cameras, we have body-worn cameras, in-squad cameras, the computers in the cars. We need to maintain internet connectability in the squad cars. We have the computers in the station. We have multiple software programs that we have to run. And anytime one of those things needs to be fixed, even if it's a remote call, someone has to be sitting in that car at that computer while the remote session is being played out to keep the computer from falling asleep and to click certain buttons that they need clicked or whatever. So having someone dedicated to our IT needs would be a huge help. The second thing is that the police department IT requests are by far and away the most IT requests that we are giving CIT right now. We're sitting, last I talked to them, we're sitting at about 90% of all help desk tickets are police department related. And it's just not super feasible.
Do we know what the average cost for each call is? Or
I suppose
some
you
point,
could
could we
break
get
down what we
total?
pay minus, divided by the amount of help desk tickets we create.
Is it, Kathy, is that something we could possibly get, a breakdown of the service?
A lot of them are covered with our contract-based amount that we are charged, but we would take that divided by all the calls and figure it out.
Yeah, so we can compare
Yeah.
what we're looking to do.
Yeah, because we pay a base amount around 8,000 a month, I believe. And, let me jump up there quick. So, yeah, we pay a base amount of around 8,000 a month. One thing that CIT just before this meeting, and I apologize because Jeff didn't hear about this yet either, it was probably about a half hour. CIT contacted us to find out if there's something that they could do because they'd learned about the recent leaving of, what was his? Andrew Pritchard. So the recent leaving of Mr. Pritchard. So once, they're looking at some possible fill-in or even some possible long-term fill-in for the position. They want to propose something to me. I won't have it till probably the end of next week, but this is our current proposal to get a full-time IT for the police in, and then we are looking, or they're proposing or offering something that may be available more long-term from CIT as well.
It still would be nice to compare
It would, yes,
what we're spending.
absolutely.
What we potentially would have to do in-house.
Yep, we should run those numbers.
I have a question. When you're referring to the individual that's in the department, so it was a patrol officer that was good at IT, basically?
Well, it was a
and-
patrol officer that was on a medical light duty.
Okay.
So,
Was pretty good at handling some
well,
of your issues?
he enjoyed it.
Yeah,
So we let him run with it,
Sure.
and he basically was taking all of our IT help desk tickets, and we weren't even submitting those to CIT.
Trying
The
to
only
do
time
is-
he would call them is if he needed help.
he'd be the one that'd be sitting in
But
the
he would
car
be the one
pushing the
that
buttons.
was, and that
Okay,
was, he was doing that full-time.
well, that was handy. I'm sorry to hear that we don't have that available. So, but this is the first time that we would have a designated IT person for the department, if we go through with this proposal. It'd be an additional staff person. Would it be a police officer, trained
No,
patrol person?
it'd be a
You're looking for IT.
civilian employee. Yep.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thanks, chief.
Thank you.
Okay, so those are our two new personnel requests for the 2025 budget.
So before we hit this, can we back just a second, a question that I had asked a few months ago about an IT for the city itself?
Yes.
That is not anywhere in the documents. I'm assuming we are avoiding the IT issue for city clerk or anybody in this building, or what are we doing?
Well, it kind of ties in with the police. So currently, we have an individual that is from CIT that is here 1.5 days a week. Okay, so a total of 12 hours dedicated to us every week for the year.
12 hours a week for
12
every
hours a week.
department.
And a majority of those are with the police department. So instead of focusing his energy and time over at the police department, if you hired a full-time IT for the police department, that individual then would be able to work back on all of the other issues that we have here at City Hall and potentially at the fire department as well. So they're not able, like I said, they're just not able to dedicate both time to the PD and time to the rest of the personnel.
So let's just say hypothetically, we kept going with the CIT, with their consultant. I'm assuming we would need less time in the month, or would you still think we need that $8,000 a month?
No,
1.5 days?
he's primarily dedicating all of his time to the PD.
Sure.
I would say not neglecting, but lacking his time to spend on all of the other issues that we have here
But
at
so
City
would
Hall.
it be possible if we still used, a new employee to be the IT person? Not new, I realize up until about 1.5 years ago, we did have a department or a group of
Yeah.
IT people. Is there cost savings there that we're using CIT now for a little more streamlined consulting, maybe overview on equipment purchases and things like that, but consulting here in this building, Public Works, et cetera?
They do a
But
lot
they
of
wouldn't
additional
be as
service.
busy because they wouldn't be doing police work. If we added the police department staff person, my question is, could we spend a little bit less on CIT? Save some money there.
No, I think the services would have to remain, because they do overarching services for PD as well. It's just
Okay.
not the individual within the police department. They do the databases and all that other.
And they maybe wouldn't be willing to work for
Firewalls
a
and
lesser
things.
amount,
Yeah.
if we cut their schedule too much.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, jump on it. You were here when that
So we
started.
have managed services, which is at $8,000 a month.
Okay.
Right, and that's the ticket generation. Then we have the on-site services, which is a separate bucket, call it, right?
Well,
So every time that.
on-site is 12 hours then?
Yes. So I have an issue with Excel or something on my computer won't, turn on or whatever. I submit a ticket that goes into the managed services bucket, which is a much cheaper rate that as opposed to when the individual's on site and somebody just says, hey Bob, his name's not Bob, I'm just gonna call him Bob for now.
That's a good name.
Marshall.
Yes, Marshall, but
I've met
if
him.
he's the one, if he's the one that, you know, if you pull him aside, it comes into that bucket. So they've been out of the managed services to the on-site services. So what we do is we've advised staff to know if it's a simple issue that can be resolved remotely, where they can log into your computer, that's how that should be handled, so that it's a more cost-effective way for us to resolve IT issues that are, you know, simpler to fix. And the majority of issues we have in this building, City Hall specifically, are ones generally that can be handled remotely. Now, is it painful sometimes? Yes. It was painful before we, you know, contracted this out. It's not,
Well,
I don't know that it's a simple solution one way or the other.
and it should be noted, the cost of having we had two individuals on, for IT in-house, right? And that, whenever they came around, they sometimes had to learn about an issue that was being created. With CIT, for the same cost of those two individuals plus benefits, right? Same cost of those two individuals plus benefits, we're getting all of CIT's power to do the changes that we need within the building. They're making sure that our firewalls are up to government standards. They're making sure that all the police department patrol vehicles have good running computers. So they're going through our entire system on a regular basis, updating and making sure that things are working well, right? So you get an entire backing of the company for the cost of those two individuals.
And this first year was a lot of discovery,
That should understand that, yes.
too,
Well,
right?
for the purpose of time, I guess, the math is starting to really look goofy here, because you're saying 12 hours for a guy to work, and for the purpose of time, we can bring this up at our next discussion about it, but
Sure.
the math is seeming a little ridiculous. We're paying $96,000 a year. If we're doing the numbers you guys have given me, $8,000 a month, so you got 12 hours per week for an on-site, but 90% of that is spent at the police department. So there seems to be a lot of drilling down on this.
There's also equipment and everything else that are all part of those expenses.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conversation.
It's not making sense, and I think we're spending too much and not getting enough.
Okay.
Well, I think it's important to look at the dollar amount, but I'm hearing from the staff that they want the support of a highly skilled group of people. I did have, I'm joking that, yes, I have met the IT consultant because I had trouble with my iPad.
Yeah.
Quirky thing, I met with him twice before we kind of figured it out. And at one point he said, well, I'm gonna have to check with somebody in my company who's the such and such specialist. So that is one thing they do bring in, is quite a bit of expertise for that dollar amount in various areas of the different softwares that our municipal group, that we use. So I'm hearing that from you, but I am concerned about the cost as well, Randy, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, if you're always concerned about costs, and this is the way I've always said it, you should go out for bid then, right? And that'll tell you exactly where the market is for those type of costs. And if CIT bids the low amount for what we need and what we want for services, great. If they don't, if there's another company out there that does it, okay. But that'll tell you you're always in that ballpark. But I would not recommend going backwards and hiring a whole fleet of CIT people here. That's just gonna cost you more money in the long run, I know it will, so. But we can definitely look at the numbers. Okay. Any other questions on that? Okay. Capital improvements. All right, so this is, did we hand out? Okay. All right, this is difficult to see on the chart. But essentially what this is doing, Ellers sat with myself, Mike Johnson, and a few of the finance staff, looking at what we needed to complete the projects for DPW and PD, including getting all the way to the sign, there's Ross, to the sign shop, and then completion of the PD as well. Rather than taking a step back or looking at future borrowings, let's see what it takes to get it done in one place. So you can see a very large number in the 2025 column. Go over to the end of the short blue column, and you see that proposed 2025 GO notes. We'd be looking at a total borrowing of $12,175,000, which includes about $7.5 million worth of your standard capital improvement projects, plus the additional $5 million to complete both of those legacy projects. Then you look at the 2027 borrowing. So again, every 2 years we look at additional borrowings. They're looking at, that was $4 million in 2027. And then in 2029, you're looking at somewhere around the same. I don't know if I see those numbers there. But essentially what it's telling us is, and if you look at the graph below, we're going to have a large peak, and that's going to be this larger debt service, and eventually it would start tapering out over time. This chart shows a period of 40 or 25 years, from 2024 to 2049. So over this next 20-some years, we're looking at that standard borrowing. Now this takes into account a standard borrowing of, let's just see here. Let's see, the column next to the year is the projected equalized tax rate, going up from 2025 budget of 1.19, going to 1.46 in 26, and then it continuously goes up to a peak that you could see and follow on the chart, and then it starts tapering off again somewhere in, let's see, 2020 or 2037 is when you start to dip down below the 1.45 that I explained in my budget narrative that I handed out to everybody. So the 1.45 is about where things have been sort of standardized, or 1.5, 1.45 is where we've standardized over the last probably about 10, 12 years. That's where we've kind of stayed, and if we started going down a little bit, we've borrowed more, and we've kept that standard about 1.45, 1.5. So as you can see, this edges up quite a bit higher than that as we go along through throughout this 25-year period. One thing to note, though, this does not take into account the equalized value and valuation going up over time. So as valuations this assessed value goes up, the estimated assessed valuation goes up, which we would expect we would continue to grow. Some of those percentages will start to drop every year. It doesn't take that into account, right, Mike? No,
there's no inflationary factor included in it. It assumes the value of $2.5 billion, which is our base assessed value.
Yep.
And then our equalized value preliminary is a little over $3.1 billion, and I think Brent alluded to.
Yeah, 3.1, almost 3.2. Yep.
Almost 3.2. We'll be doing the reval starting next year.
Yep.
And that will have a big impact going in probably budget 27.
So the hope is that those numbers would start to drop a little bit because of that reval.
What was the original that we requested for the PW and PD?
Yep, I can get to that in the very next slide.
So we're asking about $5.5 million more.
Yep. So on that, so in your, yes, that's the number right there. So we're looking at about almost $5 million more, little 4.9 roughly in additional borrowing needed. So what I have here on that chart, I just wanted to separate this out from the other capital improvements because it is a really big piece of what we're talking about. So the first part is the costs, right? Total cost of both projects is originally projected at 14 million, or actually, excuse me, got to step back. The current costs are projected at $14,325,699. The original projected costs were for public works, 4.1 for public works, and the police building was at, you're gonna have to help me out, 4.9? 5.2? Okay, thank you. So the police building, police facility was originally at 5.2. So now you can see where those have increased, roughly about 500,000 or almost 600,000 for public works, and about, 4.3, 4.4 for the police building.
So are we borrowing 14.3 now? An addition, or
No.
is this turnkey?
This is yes, this is turnkey number, right? So what we have is, in that middle column, we have other funding that is left after purchases, okay? So that other funding right there, we have 400,000 left of the 2024A note for O'Neill Road location. We have 400,000 left in that bond going into 2025. That's because we purchased the building already. We have 5.140 left remaining in the 2024B renovation note. Okay, so that's what we have left out of the total borrowing. And Mike, maybe you can tell me what the total borrowing was. I want to say it was 13? 14? Yeah, about 13 million was the original borrowing. So now we're looking at taking out additional bonds in the range of 4.9 to cover those projects.
Brand new bonds, so we'll go
Yeah.
back to Moody's for a rating again?
Well, those would be, I shouldn't even say bonds anymore, they're all notes. But those are 4.9 in the additional notes.
Okay, but we'll go back, because since it's a new note,
Note that we would be looking at borrowing toward the end of '25.
so it'll still go back to Moody's for another rating.
It would run through Moody's with the ratings, yes. You don't necessarily
Which could
go back to Moody's.
Possibly affect our rating right now, because we're asking for it again so fast, no?
No, not at all. It won't, that won't affect anything. In fact, actually, it may increase it from the new, Moody's has changed the way they've done some of their ratings. So it actually might, what we were told by Ellers, it might actually improve our rating.
And also, remember, it includes all the construction projects.
Well-
Moody's already knows
Yep.
that we bond every 2 years.
Yep.
That's our bond inspector. So
Yep.
they know that, they knew in the last rating call
That we,
that we were gonna bond again.
Well, and we
Okay.
are at, what, 15% of our capacity?
Well, right,
yeah, we're at fractional. But of course, I think we've seen the impact of what that can do on the tax rate, right?
And this is
The
a
entire tax
solid
rate
number?
increase. What's that?
this is the
This
solid
is the
number.
solid number. Well,
Could I comment on that?
hold on, let me just step back on that. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the things is when we had the opportunity to purchase these properties, which did in fact look like they would be quite a bit less expensive than building new construction, acquiring land and new construction, we used a local, well-known, established company that we've worked with quite a few times, Market & Johnson, gave us a projection of what they thought. They evaluated the building for us, and this is for the public. Everyone here I know knows this, but they evaluated the buildings. Did they seem sound, workable? Are we walking into something difficult? And projected what it would cost. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we're working with architects
Yeah.
and a different construction company who's really fine-tuning their pencil, but I don't believe they have not gone out to
Yeah.
bid yet.
No,
So it is not the final.
Yep, and that's where I wanted to point.
Thank you.
That's where I was going with it too, so,
Yeah.
good explanation, it really is. So, these are the numbers that were projected to take out in 2025, okay? If the bids come in less than the projected construction costs, we will borrow less, okay? We won't know what those projected construction costs and what the bids will come back with until the end of 2025, because we're projecting to start construction over the winter of 25, 26, and hopefully end by the end of '26 for both projects.
Yeah,
But,
and I'm still
yeah, we'll
behind
borrow
the
less.
project, I mean, we're saving 60% of what we would have ended up
Yes.
having to build a new one. But are we we gotta make sure we're doing it fiscally responsible as
Yeah.
we're moving it forward.
Well,
These are a lot of numbers.
And I can tell you, both have cut a number of things out of their budgets to try to make things work a little bit more closely.
Because and I know they're legacy projects or whatever you wanna call
Yep.
them, but at the same time, we've got people screaming about roads, and here we are building new facilities.
Yep. Which is, we're not, with this, again, we're not, because again, that's a separate piece, all still combined together in the total borrowings that we're going to need to do, or the total notes that we're gonna need to take out in '25. We're also looking at the street projects. Boy, that really does not show up very well. So we're not taking away from the street projects. So if you go down and you see the street infrastructure, and I'm gonna breeze right through these because I think everybody needs to take a chance to look at them and just kind of digest what's on here. There's a few pieces I think we probably need to talk about. So Jeff, I hope you're ready. No? All right, good. And then I always think we could always save a lot if we just look at KIP's budget too. There's all kinds of money there for us. But anyways, so I had to say it with KIP sitting right there. It's gonna be my thing going forward.
And a lawyer.
Maybe it's everybody's
We
thing,
gotta
right?
have a lawyer fee too.
Yes. So, okay, so looking at that, we don't change anything in the borrowing for the street maintenance project. Miraz's team, Mike Miraz's team has saved $975 million in the borrowings that we have done in '22, '23, and '24. Those, what's,
Jeez,
Did I
that's,
say-
yeah, million.
975,000, thank you. Okay.
Approved. You can ask
money,
money.
yes, approved.
Raise.
Nice. Okay, so 975,000 in those 2022, 23, and 24 notes. So those roll in, and we'll be able to take that up on the street maintenance infrastructure costs, but we're not taking anything away from what they have done in the past. Major projects or major pieces, we have the 2 squad cars every year. We have computers that need to be replaced. Some of them actually most of them I should say are 5 years or older. So there's a lot of computers that do have to be replaced, and we need to get on a replacement schedule for that, and CIP has brought that to our attention. So as they're aging, they're slowing, and we need to replace them to match. I think what is it, almost like 30 or 40 of them are not Windows 11 compatible, which is no longer serviced in 2025. So we have to replace all of those. And then the fire department does have some numbers in there. If you look at that center number, we do have to borrow for the full amount because the city takes the loan out for those. However, the center number under the fire column is what the other jurisdictions pay in with interest. They would pay in with interest on the borrowing that we do. So essentially it negates a good 40% of those requests within the fire department. Okay. And this year we should also point out that we are looking at borrowing in 2025 to clear out as many of the ash trees that we have in the city. That's $250,000 to clear out ash trees, believe it or not. That's a large number, but we do need to take care of them as some of them are crumbling, and within the streets with some of these windstorms, it's not a good situation. Okay, 2026 capital improvement projects. I won't even go over this. It's the same stuff with streets, parks. Public Works has some equipment there. If you got any questions on the equipment, I would say go ahead and reach out to the department heads. Squad vehicles, again, 2 every year, and then PC equipment replacement stuff. All right. In 2027, fire department's looking at a new tender. That's one of the larger amounts there at $600,000. Again, 40% of that is paid by the jurisdictions. And of course, the various street projects. We're up to $3 million for street projects in 2027 and 28 borrowing. You can see the 28 borrowing here. And this is where I think the one anomaly, and I hate to do this to you, Jeff, because I know, actually, you want the spotlight on this, don't you? We're talking about a patrol boat, and that's the last item that's in your agenda packet for this particular meeting. Shows the need, he explained the need for a new patrol boat, and I think I should give him some time to help explain that need for everybody. And then I think we're done. Go ahead, Jeff. Just the boat.
Hello again. So our current patrol boat is about 20 years old, Boston whaler that was purchased back when we had St. Croix EMS here. Okay, so you have the explanations and
Yeah.
the photojournalism that we did to put that together. Basically, it's not really well designed or equipped for what we use it for, right? Which is quick on and off, generally shoreline docking, right? The boat is virtually designed to dock on a dock, right? Which we don't really have the ability to do out in the field. The walking lanes are skinny. There's not really a safe way to transport more than 2 people. We have a 2-officer minimum to goes on the boat if we deploy the boat. If we have to make any apprehensions or bring anybody off the island, you're talking about potentially becoming over capacity, right? So there's several issues with it. The age, the engine is a saltwater engine, requires maintenance. Everything does require maintenance. It's just another check mark as why this is not the best design. So 5 years from now, we'd be looking to, replace that.
Could you explain what you do right now? I mean, there's a fair bit of mutual aid, if I can use that phrase, or on the river. How is the public safety handled? Are you out quite often with this boat?
We go out basically to the islands when we're requested right now, because that's really the only availability we have.
Sure.
We do go out when we're having large weekend events or holiday weekends. We're out there if we have the staff to do it.
Just preventive or
And-
sort of?
and patrol.
Patrolling, okay.
On the river. We also have Washington County that's out there patrolling the river. You also have the Wisconsin DNR, St. Croix County that are out there patrolling the river.
Sure.
So there's a fair amount of aid if we need it out there.
But we need to carry our
Absolutely.
weight, and I thank you for the map that showed where our designated area that's in the packet
Yeah.
of where you are patrolling or responsible for. Okay, thank you.
What kind of boat are you looking for, Jeff?
Well, it's just a patrol boat, right? So are you familiar with the sheriff's department boat that they got last year or the year before? Have you
I've
seen that out?
Yeah.
It's similar to that, just not that scale. So it's a more flat bottom boat. It's lower down. It's easier to jump off of it onto an island, get back onto it when you're trying to reboard the boat. Some of the tech is what drives the price, and that's a best guess. I didn't actually go out to get a physical quote yet, because that's going to go up probably 15% by that time, right? So this is a best guess as far as the cost, and it was very conservative, right? Meaning I guessed high.
So what, okay, I see the ladder on front. What do you mean by saltwater engines? They come from saltwater, or they're intended for saltwater?
Intended for saltwater.
I don't understand that, so why don't they?
I don't either.
Okay.
That's the best explanation I have, but
Yeah,
the
you're the
bottom,
boat guy, yeah.
on the, on
I've
page
never heard of
80,
an engine that's a
page 81
saltwater.
of your packet shows kind of a picture of the type of boat that we would be
I
looking
see
at.
that, yeah, I see it now.
That's the one you want.
Not exactly,
Or-
no, that's just the type, the manufactured type of boat. It would be pretty close to that, though.
Anybody else? Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, I know we're right up against time. We're actually going into council time. Is there any, this first presentation of the budget, any questions or recommendations to bring back at our next meeting? That's the first meeting that I'd like to present to the council.
It was nice that you had this information the way you laid it out, so that was helpful. And having it before the meeting, not during the meeting, very much appreciated.
Yep, no, and I'll tell you, staff, I think, and us, and myself, and finance, we've all learned through the process of where things are, and hopefully they've gotten something out of it, and I think we all have too.
I found it helpful that the requests, thinking out several years, like the police chief just talked about the boat that he feels would be helpful, that there was a description of what it would be spent on and why. And I liked that for all of those capital improvement projects. So, that's kind of penciled out. I also liked it that they were ranked need, high, medium need, so we can help if we do have to select between projects, what seems most important to those department heads. So again, I thought the packet was great. I appreciate the presentation.
And I would like to, at some point, address the street maintenance and get into all that talk
Okay.
about what streets we're gonna do. And
Yeah, and I think
we've got
that
some
gets a little,
concern. I know it does, it gets, but,
Well, they
we've got to
say-
do our job at representing the districts that we are in, and you go in and fight for what you can get.
but on $2.5 million
I know.
projects, they saved $975 million, so. We're in good shape. We're in real good
That's what I
shape.
thought. But I just want to have that in the conversation coming up.
Yep, no, that's good, that's good. Okay. Anything with personnel or anything where we're heading right now in the existing budget? Keep things as is for the time being until, obviously, the mayor and I have to have a conversation about where things are, because it will be his budget to finally present, but I think overall, we've kept the numbers where as low as we could, considering where we are with the capital improvement projects that we need to do.
I think for me, the bigger concern, I'm not happy with the 9.92%
Yeah,
increase. I'm nervous, very nervous about the future when we start adding in the cost of capital improvement projects. Not to mention there are other things on the horizon that we have to worry about.
Unfortunately, I mean, the hard news is that's where the city is going to be if, I mean, you can't have personnel if they don't have the material to work with, right? So I don't know how you exchange one for the other at this point, and you've already committed to those major projects. The only option would be is to cut the major projects and sell the buildings back. That would be, I mean, that's the one way out of it, and I know they don't want to, nobody wants to hear that, but that's the way to back out to get back to where we were. But I think we've reached so far, we're committed into those projects already, and they are going to be important for the city in the way that those departments function in the future. Okay.
All right, anybody else? Thanks, Brent.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, everybody, for the presentations.
Yeah, again, thanks staff for all the work they've put into this too. It's been incredible, the department heads.
And maybe we found our new finance director.
Oh, right there, huh?
All right, I don't have anything.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.